Welcome to Access Academy, where we are always diving into content that relates to products, services, or programs offered through APH. Today, it's all about Braille. We know that there is not a shortage of instructional Braille code resources to use with students, and probably most often we teachers create our own materials. In thinking about what is used to teach Braille, how often do we stop to think about whether reading skills are embedded in the instruction, or do we simply focus on the Braille code? So our learning today takes off with teaching reading and writing using Building on Patterns, which is a full literacy program for students. Our presenter is APH's Braille Literacy Product Manager, Hunter Summerlin. She brings much background experience of teaching a variety of students across many levels of ability. She's used Building on Patterns within an itinerant setting of serving students. And when Hunter's not busy, she's actively engaged with her doctoral studies, focusing on curriculum and instruction. By the end of our time together, we will have identified the prerequisites of Braille instruction, looked at basic components of Building on Patterns lessons. We want to apply effective literacy instruction, what we know about that, apply it with the product Building on Patterns, and we're going to dabble a little bit in the research that supports what we are doing with our Braille reading students. The perfect place to begin when talking about literacy is exploring some of the foundations of reading for all students. Knowing that there are a lot of publications in circulation about how children become skilled readers, a long time ago, back in 1997, Congress established what's called the National Reading Panel. And it was over the course of 3 years that over 100,000 studies were reviewed. Their goal was to determine the most effective methods for teaching reading. From this panel, we learned that the best way to deliver reading instruction is to make sure that students receive explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, systematic instruction in phonics, instruction in reading fluency, vocabulary instruction, and reading comprehension strategies. These 5 pillars of reading will reoccur throughout our time together over the next 90 minutes, and each are threaded throughout the literacy program that we're going to be talking about. Also, woven into our discussion are 4 skill areas necessary for children who are blind to achieve in order to be successful Braille readers. These 4 skill areas are language development, auditory discrimination, concept development with hands-on experience, and textual discrimination. Now, we'll put both of these side by side, showing how each complements one another. We have language development aligning with vocabulary. Auditory discrimination pairs nicely with phonemic awareness and phonics. Concept development and comprehension go together. And having good textual discrimination really allows for our students to read with fluency. Again, all of these prerequisites and skill areas of reading are going to continue to resurface in this presentation, almost as if you're having deja vu. And now I'm going to pass things over to Hunter as she introduces to us more about what we needed to know for Building on Patterns.
Thank you so much, Amy. You did a fantastic job. I appreciate your collaboration today. And now I would like to introduce the product, Building on Patterns. So what is Building on Patterns? You'll hear me refer to it as BOP. Building on Patterns, also known as BOP, is a complete primary literacy program designed to teach students the Braille code and reading skills. So the big 5 are interwoven throughout the BOP series. You will see phonemic awareness, phonics, comprehension, fluency, and vocabulary throughout each level of BOP. The introduction of the Braille contractions in BOP is Percival and purposeful and based on research. All of the Braille contractions are taught by the end of the second grade. Now, we know that sometimes our students don't learn everything they need to know with regards to Braille contractions by the end of the second grade, but they are introduced in BOP by the end of the second grade. The last aspect I would like to speak to with regards to introducing building on patterns is that instruction is systemic and explicit. And let's just take a moment and dive into that and explore what that might mean with regards to a Braille literacy program. So when instruction is systematic and explicit, it is overt. So BOP teaches students overtly, and within BOP, the lessons do not ask TVIs to have their learners kind of try to feel through and figure it out on their own. BOP teaches students the role of each component of literacy and how those components interact and relate to one another. So explicit systematic instruction sometimes is simply referred to as explicit instruction. And this involves a specific concept or procedure being taught in a highly structured and carefully sequenced manner. So research has indicated that teaching reading skills in this manner is extremely effective and can significantly improve students' abilities. This strategy has also been shown to be effective across grade levels and for students from diverse groups, including students who are English language learners. The key components of explicit systematic instruction have a few facets. So during this highly structured kind of instruction, the teacher will do things like the following. You will see a teacher clearly identify the skills or concepts that will be learned, which might include highlighting important details. You will see the teacher connect new content to previous learning. Precise instructions will be given, modeling concepts and procedures in a step-by-step manner, indicating and including think alouds in which the teacher verbalizes his or her thought process while demonstrating a concept or procedure. And also with systematic explicit instruction, you will see teachers providing opportunities to practice using a scaffolded instruction sequence, which includes both guided and independent practice. So also during systematic instruction, lessons are presented in a fashion that build on one another, moving from simple skills and concept to more complex ones. And complex skills are broken into smaller, more manageable chunks. So building on patterns is not new to APH. There is a lot of history with building on patterns. In fact, it was originally derived from the Braille literacy series Patterns, which was released in the 1980-1981 school year. Isn't that fantastic? Originally, the levels that were released were the readiness, pre-primer, and primer levels. And it was designed to teach reading to children who will use Braille as their principal learning medium. So from patterns, we built building on patterns. The first revision initiative took place in 2006, and the big five were added at that time. Additionally, pre-K material and content was developed, and a new level was created. A website came about, and there have also been UEB revisions over time, which began in 2014. I would like to talk about the BOP website, which is aph.org. bop.org or aphbop.org. This is an absolutely fantastic resource, and I love it. I have used it frequently in my practice, and it's greatly beneficial to me. One of the things that's helpful is that there's a landing page with links containing information on each level. Let me go ahead and navigate to that so that you can see and hear about the website. Okay. Okay. So I am sharing the Building on Patterns website, and towards the top of the page, there are several buttons. One is BOP Home, one is pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. So all of the levels of BOP are included, and this is kind of the landing page. You'll see areas of focus towards the bottom left of the page or mid left of the page, and critical skills on the bottom right. Each level is focused on here. So I just clicked on pre-K. You see graphics containing cover art for the pre-kindergarten BOP volumes. Something I wanted to point out particularly was the teacher resources section. So I'm going to go on the left-hand side. There are 4 kind of stacked rectangles buttons. One is features and samples, teaching components, ordering information, and then the last one is teacher resources. I would like to click on that to share a few things with you. The teacher resources are wonderful because it just includes so much information. For example, if you wanted to access the parent letters, there is a link under the contents that allows you to click on that. And then that would lead you to be able to download that in either a Word document or a BRF file. You can also access things like audio files for the songs included in the lessons, which is greatly helpful if you need examples of how the songs are sung. There are also monitoring charts and reading roundup consumables, which are very helpful for your progress monitoring. So I just wanted to share the website with you, and I will now go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so the website is a fantastic source of information. For example, if you wanted to order the next level of BOP and needed to know what the part numbers were or what would be included, you could go to the website, click on the level of BOP that you're teaching, and then find that information under ordering information. The UEB supplements are important to point out. Currently, all of the student materials have been UEB updated. The second grade teacher's manual is still being worked on, so you can download the UEB supplement and then mark up your teacher's edition if you need to. Okay. So here's a poll.
So we want to know in this poll, thank you so much, Hunter, for sharing with us about the website. We want to know in our poll, have you used the Building on Patterns website? We're going to get this poll launch where you can say, there we go, where you can say yes, maybe no, but I did know it was a resource. Maybe your answer is just flat no. I didn't even know this existed. This helps us to know your level of awareness and exposure with this type of a resource. Also, some of you have put answers into the chat, which is just fine as well if for any reason you cannot access that poll. So I will go ahead and share this results out with you. And so what we have is 63% of you said, no, I didn't even know this existed. This is really helpful to us. And so we hope that in this audience of 230 friends and colleagues that are with us, that we have helped you to learn of something extra that you can have in your toolbox to help you with providing this Braille instruction. And many more people also put into the chat window know that they did not even know it was a resource. So I am thrilled, Hunter, that you have introduced us to this great resource.
Thank you so much, Amy. I've already referred to the levels of BOP, but currently there are 4 of them: pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, first, and second grade. And so let's look a little bit more in depth at all of the levels of BOP. Let's take a look at pre-kindergarten first. So one of the great things about BOP is that it includes so many different resources when you purchase it. There are sets of print parent letters, parent booklets. There are a set of 27 print children's books, a set of 28 Braille children's books, including 1 print Braille book. There are also 4 student workbooks and 28 tactile storybooks. There is a worksheets pack. There is a manipulatives pack. And there are monitoring charts and reading roundup consumables, which are also available online. I'm sorry, I pressed too many buttons at once. Okay, let's talk about the lesson layout for pre-kindergarten. On the right-hand side of the PowerPoint, there is kind of a screenshot of one of the lessons in BOP pre-kindergarten. It is lesson 2, My Preschool. And you will see at the top speaking and listening, and it begins with an interactive read aloud. So there are many components of a BOP lesson which align with the Big 5. Not every single pre-kindergarten lesson in that level of BOP has all of these components, but it will have most of them. So those components are speaking and listening, knowledge and concept development, phonological awareness, reading, writing, specialized skills, and enrichment. So let's talk about phonemic awareness. First of all, we need to know what phonemic awareness is. So a phoneme is an individual unit of speech sound. So let's go through an example together. The word cat has 3 phonemes: k, a, and t. I want to speak the phonemes again. K, a, t. So one of the important things when you're teaching reading, specifically phonemic awareness and phonics, is that we want to very clearly convey and express phonemes to students. So sometimes there's this temptation, just because we're English speakers, to add an additional kind of sound, which is called a schwa, after each phoneme. So now I will kind of model the wrong behavior, or the undesired behavior, and teach you how not to express phonemes and how to add a schwa. So that would be k, a, t. So the desired way to approach this is k-at. And that is because when a student goes to blend a word, it's much easier to blend without the additional sound. K-at easily blends to cat, where ka-ata blends to ka-ata. How does C-A-T read as cat when you told me that ka-ata were the sounds? So think of this from the child's perspective and do your best not to add a schwa. So the schwa does have a place in the English language. For example, in the word about. Did you hear that at the beginning of the word about? It's very much that guttural sound, about. I'm speaking the word A-B-O-U-T, about. It's not about or about, it's about. And I need to pronounce that schwa at the beginning of the word to make it make sense. So just don't add it to the end of phonemes and your student will be able to blend much, much better. So now we know what a phoneme is. It is an individual unit of speech sound. We need to find out what a grapheme is and a morpheme is. So phonemes and morphemes and graphemes, oh my, what are we going to do? Okay, so a morpheme is the smallest meaningful unit of grammar with meaning that cannot be broken down into any smaller units. So I know you're thinking, what on earth is she talking about? So let's give examples. Morphemes can be suffixes. So the suffix ing, which is also a Braille contraction, says ing. So that is an example of a morpheme. If we took apart ing, which says ing, it wouldn't be the same. It would lose meaning. It would no longer be largely a suffix. And I think ing is a great example of a morpheme because it is a Braille contraction and it comes with rules and not being able to be used at the beginning of a word. Okay, let's discuss graphemes. So when we take a phoneme and then we write it down, it becomes a grapheme. So a grapheme is the written expression of a phoneme or a morpheme. So graphemes can be a single letter, a sequence of letters, such as TCH or SH. And I know I just referred to them being written. Writing applies to Braille writing here, as well as print writing. But sequences of letters or individual letters or contractions representing sounds are also graphemes. So if a child says the sound t, this is a phoneme, but when they Braille out the letter T, it is a grapheme. Let's talk about phonemic awareness and the big five in Bob pre-kindergarten. So we just went over what a phoneme is, what a grapheme is, what a morpheme is. Now let's see how that's practiced in Bob kindergarten. Okay, on page 147 of the teacher's manual, which is volume 1, lesson 4, page 147, there is a lesson involving the initial sound that the letter Y makes. Yeah. And I know I kind of added a schwa. That one's very challenging for me to say. Initial initial Y. Yeah. Without adding a schwa, but we'll try. So the teacher instructions are to gather objects that begin with the letter Y, such as a yo-yo, yarn, a yam, yogurt, or yardstick. Say the sound of the letter Y, yeah, to the child several times and ask her to repeat it. Present each object, name it together, and emphasize the beginning y sound. Identify this beginning sound as the sound of the letter Y and ask the child if she can think of any other words that begin with the same sound. Some examples are yes, yawn, yellow, yucky, and yummy. So I want you to pay attention to the way that I intentionally emphasize the initial sound of the letter Y in all of those words, and then we'll talk about the two nonconformists at the end. So here's that list of examples again. Yes, yawn, yellow, yucky, and yummy. So I know you're thinking, well, yucky and yummy are not really following the rules here. What on earth do we do with them? It is okay to teach your students using examples and non-examples, and it is okay for letters to make more than one sound. So I have a little song that I used to sing to my students, and I honestly cannot believe I am doing this for all of you here, but it's a great song to sing when a letter makes more than one sound, and it can be altered to basically address this issue for any letter and any sound that it makes if it makes two sounds. It is somewhat to the tune of Three Blind Mice, which is moderately ironic in this setting. I know I prefer not three blind mice, but three rodents with visual impairments. So I will go ahead and again, I cannot believe I'm singing you this song, but just know that it is for the betterment of students and Braille literacy. So Y says y, Y says y, Y says e, Y says e. Every letter makes a sound. Y says y and e. So isn't that cute? Now we've addressed how Y can make the y in yucky and the e in yucky, and how Y can make the y in yummy and e in yummy. So I would also discuss with my learner that the Y at the end of the word makes the E, and the Y at the beginning makes the Y. And see if you can come up with any other examples. Okay. So I wanted to kind of backtrack just for a second and talk about an important component of BOP Pre-K. We have a fantastic amount of parent letters. There's a parent letter for each lesson, and they're available on the website. So let me actually go back to that. So I am now screen sharing the BOP website, aphbop.org. I've already clicked on the bar at the top for pre-K, and I do want to share the parent letters with you. There's a parent letter for each lesson. I'm going to click on under resources. There is a section called contents. It begins with FAQ, and about a third of the way down, perhaps half, is parent letters. And when I click on that, there is an option. You give some information indicating that printed hard copies are included in the student kit, but you can customize these digitally using these links. There are Word docs and BRFs, and there is a letter for each lesson. One of the fantastic thing about these letters is that it tells the family exactly what you're doing. and it engages the family. So I have just taken a couple of notes from one of the lesson letters. Bop Pre-K Lesson 1 sends home a parent letter calling for parents to talk about letters at home with their child, discuss the sounds and letters at the beginning of each family member's name. So these are very real, easy, applicable, relevant, organic ways to get family members involved in the Braille literacy learning process. I think sometimes parents can be overwhelmed if they are not Braille readers themselves at the thought of having a Braille reading child at home and not knowing exactly how that's going to look, and perhaps having a little bit of trepidation. But the parent letters are a great way to get the family involved. They suggest many fantastic activities. So another one in this parent letter for lesson 1 is play a game with words while you're driving in the car. Think of as many words as you can that start with the same letter as your child's first name. So if your first name, I'll do mine is Hunter. I would think of hop and horse and hunt and honey and all of those fantastic words. It says for families to take turns naming words you can think of, including objects, verbs, adjectives, family member names, and favorite song titles. How many words can you think of? So when we're involving families in Braille literacy, we're going to be more successful and hopefully create lifelong learners. So I just wanted to share and highlight the parent letters. It's a highly useful tool on the BOP website. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now, and I appreciate all of your attention. Let's talk about kindergarten. Who doesn't want to talk about kindergarten? Kindergarten is so much fun. Okay. So in the kindergarten level of BOP, there are a set of 7 student textbooks. There's a Color Me book. There is a post-test consumables pack, and there are assessment checkup forms in a packet. Here is the lesson layout for kindergarten. Again, these are the big 5 are highly entrenched in all of these components and throughout the Braille literacy series BOP. So first we have comprehension, concept development, Braille knowledge, sounds and symbols, tactual skills, and study skills. So let's talk about phonics. We learned that phonemic awareness is the understanding that spoken words consist of individual units of speech sound, which is phonemes, which are phonemes. So phonics teaches the relationship between those sounds, which are phonemes, and the letters that represent them, which are called graphemes. So phonics elevates phonemic awareness because with phonemic awareness, we haven't written anything in print or in Braille. We are listening and using our auditory comprehension skills to isolate individual units of speech sound phonemes. We are learning that the k is the first sound in cat. So phonics takes that a step further and teaches us that C is the letter that makes the k sound in cat. So you're getting the sound letter correspondence with phonics. So morphemes are also important. Morphemes are units of sounds that cannot be broken any further down without losing meaning. So they are units of sound involving meaning. So ing is a morpheme, and it's important to fit those into phonics instruction so that morphemes involving more than one letter, which are often Braille contractions, are able to be spelled in contracted and uncontracted Braille. Okay, let's talk about phonics as part of the Big Five in Bob Kindergarten. This activity comes from Bob Kindergarten, lesson 27, page 296 of the teacher's manual. And again, if you want to go back and review these, this PowerPoint will be available to you later on if you would like to take more time with it. Here are the instructions. Well, first let me read what's on the left of the page for our friends who may not be able to access that visually. On the left-hand side of the page, there is a little snippet from a BOP lesson. There is a rectangle with columns and rows of individual letters. There are 4 columns and 4 rows. There are, it looks like, all consonants. And up at the upper right-hand corner, there's a page number, and it is 6. So on the first line, for example, and I won't read the whole thing, I'll just do the first line. There are G, C, L, and N. So ask the child, here are the instructions for the teacher. Ask the child to turn to page 6. Give the child a crayon. Tell the child that you are going to say a word for each line. Tell the child to look at the letters in the line and mark the one that stands for the sound at the beginning of the word that you say. So picture yourself as a TVI sitting next to your young learner, and they have a crayon in hand. So you're going to say cat, and then it's their job to find the letter on the first line that makes the sound. That is the first sound in cat, so they're finding the C. And then you do that for each line. So you are getting your sound letter correspondence in, and this is an illustration of phonics in the Big Five in Bob Kindergarten. Backtracking once again, I do want to briefly discuss the Color Me book. I just think it's a really neat resource. Oftentimes I would have young learners who would be interested in coloring, but there's not really so many opportunities to do that unless the TVI sits down and hot glues, the outline of a picture themselves. So the Color Me book is a really great way to involve a student who might not have visual access to coloring, but who wants to participate in the same way that their sighted peers would in a coloring activity. So the Color Me book contains 40 raised line pictures that can be colored, and each page contains 1 or 2 raised line drawings of an item that is usually the same color as the Braille and print color word at the top of the page. So the name of the items to be colored is included under the picture in Braille and print. So that is just a fun part of one of the resources in Bob Kindergarten. Okay, so let's talk about the Bob Kindergarten update. Currently, it is undergoing a complete revision. The prototype is going to be ready in the fall of 2023, so that's a few months from now. And it's anticipated that it will be field tested for the duration of the 2023-2024 school year. And then how long it takes to kind of come back from field testing and then come back to include, I don't know, any changes that might need to be made depends on the field testing results. So I can't give you like a final launch date, but we're very excited to have that going on, and I wanted to share that with you. Let's talk about Bob First Grade. So the contents of BOP first grade are both similar and different to the contents of the other levels. So instructional materials are separated into units, and there are 7 total units. Each unit is sold as a separate kit, and each student kit includes lesson monitoring sheets, assessment checkup forms, student textbook, and a worksheets packet. The Braille is interpoint, and there's also a post-test. So let's talk about interpoint for just a second. I know to some sighted TVIs, we don't really always love interpoint, because interpoint Braille means that the book has Braille on both sides of the page. While it does take up less space and is a very ideal thing to get students exposed to, because as they get older, lots of Braille will be interpoint for them, and they will have to do things like take the ACT and interpoint often. Some of my former students tested and took the ACT, and it was all interpoint. But one of the downsides is that if you're a sighted TVI who accesses Braille visually, it can be really tricky. So I wanted to share a little tip with you guys, just to see if this can help you perhaps read the interpoint a little bit better. So one of the fantastic things about working in schools is that you have access to plenty of dry erasers that are perpetually dirty. So I'm thinking of on the whiteboard tray, there's usually a dry erase eraser that the teacher uses to erase the marker ink from the whiteboard. So if it's dirty, it kind of has that residue of the remnants of dry erase marker that's been erased. And you can take that dirty eraser and run it gently along the page and just bring it left and right. And it kind of highlights the raised dots on an interpoint page and makes them easier for sighted Braille readers who access it visually to use. So that's the little tip that I'm going to share with you. So let's continue to discuss the lesson layout for first grade BOP. This is heavily aligned with the Big Five, and you will see some similarities with previous levels that we've discussed. So first there is word work, which includes phonemic awareness, phonics, and spelling. There's language, which includes background knowledge, oral vocabulary, concept development, and grammar. There is reading, which involves new reading words, reading and comprehension, oral reading and fluency. There is a writing component. This includes creative writing, writing grammar, and Braille writing. Then there is Braille knowledge, which involves all of our fantastic contractions and rules. Let's look at the Big Five in action in BOP first grade through the use of vocabulary. So this is BOP first grade, Unit 6, Lesson 30, Day 4, page 34 of the teacher's manual. Let me just pause and address the little Day 4 notation. Starting with BOP first grade, there is a 5-day structure where lessons kind of go out over, are planned over 5 days. So technically one lesson is 5 days of instruction. Now, I know you're thinking, well, you know, I see my student 1 hour, 3 days weekly. Well, we understand, but that's just kind of how these lessons are broken down. Okay. So in this activity, you have numbers 1 through 6, and you have a sentence with blank in the middle and or at the end, and then you have a word in parentheses after the end, after the sentence ends. So number one reads, he took a blank selling popcorn. So the choices that your student is supposed to kind of choose among are turn, leap, and deserves. So turn is the correct word. He took a turn selling popcorn, and you would discuss turn with the student. So the three words that are the vocabulary words for this little activity are turn, leap, and deserves. And then the words at the end of the sentence after the punctuation mark are the correct answers. But this is just an activity illustrating the use of these three words as vocabulary in BOP. I did want to share something with you. We know that our students with visual impairments are usually lacking vocabulary. I'm just making a generalization. Not all of them have a limited vocabulary, but we know that vocabulary comes from two places. How students learn words and add them to their vocabulary is built through two different means. The first mean is reading. We're likely to learn new words as we read. We understand that teaching Braille adds a layer of complexity to learning new words just solely through reading Braille. And we know that we have a number of challenges, such as students who don't read at grade level yet, students who have sudden vision loss, who are just learning Braille, who are below grade level perhaps, and students with additional needs in building their vocabulary just through reading Braille. So that can be a challenge. So that's something that we need to actively focus on and take steps to ameliorate for our learners. Another issue is that students with visual impairments don't learn incidentally. I had a student who had never owned a cat and did not know that cats eat food because she had never owned a cat. No one ever explicitly told her that cats eat cat food. So we're up against a lack of ability to learn incidentally. And this goes back to why the systematic explicit learning and teaching and the ECC are so vitally important with this population. Additionally, sometimes our students live in poverty. Poverty is a big problem, and it greatly hinders students expanding their vocabulary in a kind of an organic fashion based on experiences. So just to share a little aside with you, I once taught with a really neat woman who was a grandmother, and her son worked for Speedo and got to take all kinds of neat international trips. And those trips often involved his family. And so she had a young grandson who was 4 and called her from Rome one day. And she was like, "Hey, buddy, how are you doing?" And this 4-year-old was just a hoot, just absolutely smart as a whip, very, very, very kind of wise beyond his years. And he was also unimpressed with life in a tremendous fashion. And he said, "Yeah, hi, Gran. I'm, here in Rome, and it's been really hot, and we're just walking around looking at all these crumbled up buildings." And I laughed when she relayed this story. And he was just not interested. But think about what he's learning. And she said, "Oh, crumpled up buildings, those are called ruins. Oh yeah, we're just walking around, it's really hot, and we have to look at all the ruins." And their conversation ended shortly thereafter with a child who was sick of walking around Rome and seeing the wonders of the world. But he did learn the word ruins in that exchange. But if you have a child who lives in poverty, they're not going to gather from those kinds of experiences because they just don't have the opportunities that more middle class students do. And also, I know I've already touched on this, but our students with visual impairments wouldn't be able to see the ruins. They would have to be taught about them in a more explicit, intentional fashion. So we have a lot of things that we're up against in terms of delivering effective vocabulary instruction and increasing our learners' vocabulary, but it is vitally important to Braille literacy and literacy as a whole. So I don't know, I think back to that kid and I wonder what his vocabulary is like now if he got the word ruins at age 4. Okay, let's talk about BOP second grade. This is our final level of BOP. In BOP second grade, you have instructional materials, again, separated into units, and there are a total of 7. Each unit is sold as a kit. Each student kit includes lesson monitoring sheets, a consumable unit assessments pack, a student textbook, and worksheets pack. Again, the Braille is Interpoint, and there is a post-test. So with the lesson layout in second grade, there is word work, which includes phonemic awareness, phonics and spelling, language, which involves concept development, grammar and vocabulary, reading, which includes new reading words, reading comprehension, oral reading, and reading fluency. And there's also writing. So you'll already see some of the big 5 listed, or actually all of the big 5 listed on the lesson layout for second grade. Let's talk about fluency. So fluency, a lot of people think fluency is reading quickly, and that's part of it. But reading fluency is kind of what makes you sound good when you're reading aloud. So if the sentence was, "The bear liked the honey," I should be able to just read it with automaticity. It should be pronounced correctly. I shouldn't stumble over any of the words. I should know exactly how to pronounce them when I encounter them, whether that's in Braille, as we're discussing today, or in print. The bear liked the honey. If we had a student who was really struggling, they might sound something like this. The BR like it, the honey. So if we have a student who sounds like the second example, we know that there is a fluency problem. They're not making those sound letter correspondence associations quickly and correctly, and they're having to exert a lot of effort just to pronounce the words in the sentence correctly. And that's going to cause problems when we get to reading comprehension, because if we put all of our faculties and all of our mental energy and every ounce of everything we've got just to identify things like dot position and things like which contraction is which and what sounds say what, then we will exert a lot of mental energy in that process, and we will get to the end of that sentence or that passage, and we will have no idea what we just read. We will lose all ability to comprehend. So we can't exert all of our energy and just, figuring out dot positions and figuring out sounds, because if we do, we will not be able to comprehend. So fluency is extremely important because we want students to know with automaticity what not only the dot configurations are, but what the sounds are as well. So here is a passage from Bob's second grade, and I'll just read it for you briefly. It's 100 words. Today we will buy some school clothes for you and Mandy. And since you have helped with the yard work all summer, you get a new video game too. For real? Asked Mark. Can we get Super Pogo? Mark's friend Joe had Super Pogo. They both liked to play Super Pogo since they could play it together even though Mark could not see it. Super Pogo was a cool video game with lots of music and noises that helped Mark play it with his friend. If that is what you want, if that is what you and Mandy want, we can get Super Pogo, said Mom. Mark ran to Mandy's room. Hey, Mandy, get up, said Mark in a loud voice. Mom said we can get Super Pogo. Mandy was already up. She put on her shoes and said, Super Pogo? She grabbed Mark and jumped with joy. Wow, I love that game. So one of the things I wanted to illustrate was that this is 100 words. Ideally, you would be starting your a stopwatch or something with seconds, whether it's an app on your phone or not, that's fine. And you would be timing how long it takes your student to read. And you would, at the end of your minute, you would kind of mark it off. And then that would give you words per minute. Something further that we can do is we can mark off every time your student, for example, in the first line, which is today we will buy some school clothes for you. If they said today we will buy some school clothes for and instead of you, you could mark that, make a note, and you could indicate that that was an error. So instead of, we'll just pretend 45 words in 60 seconds, you now have 44 correct words in 60 seconds. So how you measure whether you include what's correct or just what they were able to get through is completely up to you. So now we have comprehension in Bob's second grade, which is one of the big five. So comprehension involves things such as summarizing, which we can ask the student to summarize Mandy saves the day, which is what we just read, in his own words. And he may reread all or part of the story. And we're going to encourage him to use two hands and to read smoothly and with expression. So that is a reading comprehension activity that pairs with the reading fluency passage and activity that we just did. Summarizing is a great way to make sure that your students understood what happened in the story. Like I said, if we exert all of our mental energy in trying to figure out sounds and dot position, then we're going to have some challenges when it comes to accurately recalling the information. So you should be able to ask your learners, okay, what did you just read? What happened in the story? And if they need a little bit more support, that is okay. We're here to support our learners however they need, but we want to focus on gradually withdrawing the support. So you can ask questions, who, what, when, where, why, how, and gradually decrease the number of questions that you're having to use as prompts to get your learner to provide summarizing information. Okay. So there is a BOP second grade update going on. There is a modernization to the teacher's materials. This is not a change in content. You will not see any of the content in BOP second grade altered. You will just see UEB updates to print and Braille teachers editions, assessment forms, and the reference volume. It should be completed in the summer of 2024. Something important that I wanted to share about BOP second grade is that on the BOP website, you can discover some of the themes of that unit. And some of those include humor, community helpers, family and friends, sports, recreation, and leisure, Then there's science, which involves weather, plants, and seasons, and another science unit involving animals, insects, and environment. So those seem pretty aligned with what a second grader might be interested in naturally. So overall, I just want to reiterate that learning the Braille code should not occur in isolation, and that we cannot effectively teach the Braille code outside of the scope of reading. The two really go hand in hand. It's everyone's responsibility, whether you're the TVI or not, or perhaps the special education or general education teacher. Everyone works together to provide effective reading instruction for students with visual impairments. So thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Hunter, for everything that you have shared with us today, digging into the program, building on patterns, and showing us how all the things that we know that skilled readers need is included in this full literacy program. And so I wanted to let you know there is a plethora of really great questions that have been put into the chat window. And so I wanted to let you know on the screen is a QR code. And this is because our webinar today is actually continuing, and it will go on into a second installment. If you scan the QR code, we will also throw into the chat window a registration. We are coming back at the start of the school year on August 22nd, same time, from 1 to 2:30 p.m. We're going to come back and we're going to explore building on patterns and focus on strategies for literacy achievement. And specifically, this is focusing on we know that the Braille code and helping students become skilled readers go hand in hand, just like Hunter, you had mentioned. And so in this particular webinar that comes in August, we're going to talk about how this literacy program can also be used within an itinerant model, overcoming some challenges, some of those really heightened questions that you might have that have even been dropped into the chat window here today can be addressed in this more problem-solving arena. Today, we wanted to just tell you about the sequence of this particular product, kind of the brass tacks of how to use it, giving you that assurance that it is addressing those literacy components. And it's not just focused on teaching the Braille code in isolation. So we will come back to do that problem solving. So here in May, we are closing out our school year and coming back in August, helping to equip you to think about using this in an itinerant model. So we encourage you to go ahead and register for that now, get it on your calendar so that you can receive those email reminders when it comes about. Or if you have a camera and you want to just hold it up to the screen, you can get that QR code there.